Jumping into this video, huge thanks to our patron supporters over on Patreon, Jonah, Michael, and Caleb. Thank you guys so much to all three of you. You are very special to me. You are my special boys, as I always say it. B-O-I-Z, my boys. We are bad boys for life. Thank you so much for being so awesome. If you want to help support the channel, the Patreon link is in the description down below, and so is the link to our secondary channel, Degenerate Plays, where Nate, I, Jill, T, and other future guests, perhaps including Kevin Spacey, perhaps not, will be playing through many different games together, podcast style, having a fun time. We hope to see you there. Now let's hop into the video, because Assassin's Creed 2 did a lot right. It did so much right that our 5 things it did right was 20 minutes long, but it did some things not so great too. So we are going to be taking a look at 5 things it did wrong.
Number 5.
The first one is lackluster side content. Wow, I can't talk.
Lackluster side content.
No, so here's the thing with lackluster side content. It's worth pointing out it is not the worst in this game.
Right.
So when we look at this, we're not saying this is the worst in the series, but they were trying really hard to make these games more RPG based and introduce more side content for you to do. I do kind of think that 2, as good as it is at some of that, with things like assassin contracts, which are actually interesting, and some of the other side activities like that.
Like the Assassin's Tombs.
Yeah, Assassin's Tombs are great. The Templar layers, those are great. There's a lot of other stuff, too, that is really boring and uninteresting, like races, collecting feathers.
Yeah.
Having to walk around and collect all these little treasures that give you almost nothing.
Right.
Now, is it Unity? No, absolutely not. I think that's kind of the peak of uninteresting side content. But there was a lot in this that could have been better.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. A lot of it is like, you could tell that they tried, but to me it felt like the Spider-Man PS4 game, where it was just very repetitive. Where it's like, you do a race and you're like, oh, that was kind of fun. But then there's like 40 other races in the game, and they're all the same thing. And after a while, it just gets very boring. And same with like feathers. There's like we're hitting Arkham City level collectibles in this game, where it's just so much, and it gets so boring and so uninteresting. And they put like 12 of these like treasure chests in the same spot, so then you have to like take 10 minutes out of your way to go find these things.
Yeah.
It's really annoying.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I know you can say you can just ignore it, and absolutely you can, but the content wasn't put in to be ignored.
Right.
It was obviously put in because they thought it was interesting and something interesting to do, and our problem with it is that a lot of it just isn't. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Collecting copious amounts of treasures that give you nothing new except some florins, which you can make faster by leaving your game running with an upgraded homestead,
right,
is silly. It's not interesting.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff like that, too, that it's just boring. Number 4! The next one that we have actually is a bit of an amendment/addition to an entry we had in the first video, which is customization. Now, it did customization right in a lot of ways. Dyeing different outfits, different colors, picking different weapons with them having different stats, stuff like that. Rebuilding the villa was fun, but there wasn't really any player choice in the customization of the villa at all.
Right. Yeah, it was the buildings were all in like a set location. Like you could go in there and buy like the bank, but the bank was just in the same spot. And then when you upgraded the buildings, like upgrading the bank or the tailor or whatever, the only thing it ever did was just give you discounts. It never even like upgraded the building itself to make it look cool.
Or the stock. The stock's tied to what memory sequence you're in.
It is, yeah.
And so, like, for example, the tailor is different in every city.
Right.
So you're only getting a discount on those specific 5 different clothing dyes,
right,
for example, or repairing your armor or stuff. It's like, yeah, it's cheaper, but it would never make it worth it to drive back to, like, by carriage or whatever to the villa just to do that if you didn't have another reason to go there, like picking up your money.
Right.
So it's not like there's enough of a reason to venture out of your way to do those specific things in that specific location.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that annoys me about the customization of the villa is there is a building that does nothing, and that's the church. Now, I don't know what you could really put in there, but It literally does nothing. Like, when you buy the church, it just opens the door and you can walk inside.
When you can go up and get 2 chests.
Yes.
Yeah, there's those 2 chests on the, like, in the rafters.
So it's like, what is the point of doing that?
Again, role play. So you have a place to pray before missions.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point.
No, but I mean, if you think about it, actually, most of those buildings don't do anything.
Right.
Because that's kind of the issue with it. I mean, so you get the, was it the bordello? Like for the Cortesans?
The brothel.
The brothel, yeah, okay. Basically the same thing. But basically it's this area where people would go in and pay to sleep with these women. I mean, that's all it is.
Right.
So you would think, oh, well, this would make a big deal. I mean, it does make your city more money.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, having those Cortesans walk around the city doesn't really do anything because you don't need to blend in the city. There's not a single guard in that city. It's not even like in Assassin's Creed 1 when you go to your home base, and I'm forgetting the name of it. It's not in Jerusalem. Is it Acre?
Yeah, that's where the
Someone's going to say, it's actually Acre.
Sorry.
I don't know how you pronounce it. Please don't get mad at me on how I say roof. But here's the thing with that. There were guards there, you know.
Right.
You still were expected not to be an ass when you ran through there, and they would attack you if you were doing crazy stuff. That's not even a thing in the villa.
No.
So what's the point of buying these characters that help you blend in when there's no enemies?
There's not a point at all.
All it does is populate the city more with, you know, a set standard number of NPCs.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, there's so much. There is buildings in the villa, but most of them don't even do anything.
Yeah, just bringing more money. Do you have anything else with that, with the customization? I mean, I did kind of wish that you could have customized your clothes more.
Right.
But it was already such a huge step up from 1 that I don't really want to fault 2 for that too much.
Right. Yeah, that's basically all I had to say about it. I was just kind of upset by the lack of choices with the buildings themselves.
Yeah.
Number 3.
The next one we have is a very slow introduction. Again, not the worst in the series. That's not what we're saying. That honor goes to 3. Yeah, where you basically play as Hatham for like a couple hours, then a few hours, and then you play as Connor as a kid for probably an hour.
Yeah, you don't get to adult Connor until sequence, I think, 5.
Yeah.
Out of like 12.
It's way too long into the game. But anyways, you know, this game did have a slow introduction. Can you push through it very quickly? Yeah. You know, if you know what you're doing, you can just hit these main missions really quick. If you really want to, you could even skip the cutscenes if you've seen this game before, I suppose. Or at least some of them. But it's not great how long it takes to get into the action of the game. Now, some of it's good. You know, being able to see parts of his life before he's an assassin does add to his growth as a character, especially by the end of Revelations. And that's nice. But taking an hour to an hour and a half to get into the game actually would be more if you messed around, because there is a lot of side content you can do before becoming an assassin. You can go around, pick up chests, do stuff like that. I suppose that's not really the best way to jumpstart your game.
Yeah, and plus all the missions, the main missions at the beginning of the game were very slow. Like all those dumb Cortesan missions, that was like literally 30 minutes alone. That just felt like it was dragging on and on. And plus there's like thief missions and like just all these different things, and like deliveries for like Leonardo da Vinci and your dad and stuff like that. It's too much, and it's all too boring. Like that's kind of my problem with the introduction, is it's not that it's like, oh, well, I just want to play as Assassin Ezio. It's the stuff before him being an assassin is boring.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not interesting. It's not fun. Yeah, it's interesting to see his early life, sure, but the missions themselves are so boring.
One of the worst offenders of that, to me, now not that there aren't any, you know, boring missions once you're an assassin, but one of the worst offenders to me was when you're walking around for Leonardo da Vinci and your mother, and you're carrying a box.
Yeah.
And you're expected to walk slowly and listen to this like conversation for like 5 minutes.
Yes.
We just took off sprinting, and they had to run after us to keep up, and we cut the conversation short because we were tired of it in our Let's Play.
Right.
But I do think it's interesting like how much they drag out those beginning missions.
Yeah.
Or climb the tower to talk to your dad.
Right.
And it's like, well, you could have just had it so that, I mean, I understand in the story why this wasn't the case, but they could have written it differently so it's like, you're able to just visit your father when he's in a prison carriage, like being taken to the prison, or like when he's, you know, on a lower level, so you didn't have to do that. You just walk up to the window.
Right.
But they make it overly complicated for no reason to kind of be like, look at how much bigger this game is. And
Right.
while it is, one of the best things with Altair is that you start as an assassin. Mm-hmm. Now, you're a douche, and you're kind of a bad assassin.
Right.
And you grow over time, but you were an assassin, and you continue to progress throughout this. This game, too, we're also ignoring the fact that there's like a 20 to 30 minute intro as Desmond, even before you get to that.
Right.
You know, so it's a long intro.
It is, and it's really boring.
Number 2.
The next one is something a lot of people are not going to care about other than us. Now, I care about this more than Nate, I will admit. Like, throughout the series, I know I consistently do. It's lack of modern day content. But hear me out on this. I'm not just saying, like, this series should be Watch Dogs. You know, that's not my point. But my point is that at the beginning of this series, the idea was tying together history and modern day, which I thought was really cool. You know, and neither one of them was supposed to really outshine the other completely. I mean, history was supposed to somewhat be like the center stage for the modern day story. And that was sort of dropped at the end of 3 for a long time. And then they just did, you know, some, I guess, interim throwaway characters in the real world, which they might as well have not done at all. Until they got to Layla, I believe, or is it Lila?
Layla.
Okay, I thought I was saying it right, but the roof crowd here wants my neck. So
Well, don't worry, it's Layla.
Okay, thank God. You know, when you get to her and they actually introduce a character that they seem to care about again.
Right.
But I do think that in the first game, there were interesting real world elements with the, I guess, the plot going on with Abstergo and the Templars, and you don't know fully what's going on with it. And you could get out and you could read these emails, like in Abstergo, like you could kind of hack into the computer. It was interesting to me. And there was stuff about the test subject before Desmond. There is in this as well, inside the Animus. But you don't do any of that outside the Animus. You get out like once or twice for a little training scripted sequence and then go back in.
Yeah, this game definitely was the worst with the real world content, I think, because it basically teased you with the real world content by the beginning of the game, but the beginning of the game was so boring, like we already said, and then you get out of the Animus like one other time throughout the game, and you do like this dumb training mission where you have to like press these buttons. And I think it definitely could have been better with the modern day content, especially since 1 was so good with it. And also after this in like Revelations and stuff, it was really good in that too. So it just seems kind of weird in 2 they randomly went back on the real world content, especially when like the first one had a decent amount in it, and you could even go in and out of the Animus whenever you wanted.
I know I'm in the minority on this, but I probably can't think of another game other than a couple of those ones in the middle, you know, that were throwaway real characters. Like 4 was like that, you know, but that had a worse connection to the real world than this.
Right.
You know, and that's interesting too, because I don't know if this is true. I'll throw out here, this is speculation on my part, and on the part of the community, but I was reading that the original game director of this game, 1 and Brotherhood, had originally planned to actually create like a modern day Assassin's Creed game. Now, I don't know if that's fully true, but it always seemed like they were building to that.
Yeah.
And they kind of had a falling out, and that guy left before Revelations. I'm not going to say he was perfect, because to me, I like Revelations more than Brotherhood, again, in the minority. But that would have been interesting, and it seemed like the real world narrative was supposed to tie there eventually, even if they kept doing historical entries, but it just never did. And this was kind of the beginning of that real world connection starting to fall apart a little.
Right.
The first one, it was so big, but people complained it was boring, I think. And then in 2, it was just not there at all. But then it makes it like, why even bother with a real world story? Why not just make everything in the past and screw the Animus? Like, who needs the Animus then?
Right.
You know, they kind of worked themselves into a corner with this entry and beyond, where it was like you're still having to use the Animus and all this other stuff, but no one cares anymore about the real world because it wasn't being written well.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a problem that for sure started with this game. You know, and it ended with 3 with at least the Desmond story, but this game, it just was so boring and uninteresting, and You really didn't care. And also when you go in the real world, you literally want to like just beat the tar out of Sean. Like he just ruins all your experiences in the modern day world.
We were able to cancel him actually in our first part of our Let's Play. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check it out because hashtag Sean is over party.
Right, he's done.
Number one. It's number one.
The final one is, this is more your entry. I didn't agree at first. However, after we talked about it, I actually do. And that's that Ezio doesn't grow that much as a character in this one game. That's important to point out, because by the middle and end, and even the beginning, actually, of Revelations, very different.
Right.
You know, but I kind of want you to explain this, because I really do think that most of his growth in this game is more about his abilities and not about becoming a different person.
Yeah, so what I was getting to with this one was I think that in this game, in Assassin's Creed 2, ignoring Brotherhood or Revelations, just in 2, Ezio doesn't really change as a person in this. And that was something that was so cool about Altair in the first one was the beginning of the game, he was like just this douchebag. Like just this absolute like cocky prick that just went around and ruined things and whatever. But then by the end of the game, he was a completely different person. And throughout the whole first game, you really saw his transformation as a human being. Like not just him learning different abilities, but him growing as a person. And I didn't really get that same experience with Ezio. And in number 2 I felt like at the beginning, he was just like this guy that was joking around but then by the end of it, he was kind of just the same guy, but now he knows more assassination techniques. And to me, that's kind of that was one of my biggest problems with Ezio, just in 2. Yes, I know that they made the other 2 games to fix that, but with just being 2, he didn't really do anything, like just in his own character development that much.
Well, he's the only character who needed 3 games to grow, too. I do think it's interesting how long it took. I'm not saying every character has to grow within one game or it has to be unreasonable. But this game did certainly kind of slow that down a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not just because he stays a young man. Like, if you look at the timeline, he's actually almost 40 by the end of this game.
Right.
He's actually like close to 40, I believe. Some people say he's in his early 40s, but I think he's like 38 or 39, and he starts out as a 17-year-old. So the course of this game takes place over a long portion of his life. You would think that he would change significantly.
Right.
But he changes more throughout Brotherhood and Revelations than in this entire game of like a 20-year time period. It's just kind of not natural feeling.
No, not at all.
Also, I will say as just a honorary mention here real quick that I didn't put on the list, this game also did start a trend going forward with Ubisoft where every character had to be Ezio number 2 or
Yes.
Ezio number 3, or it was a problem with Ubisoft and the community. And I always thought that was absolutely misguided and dumb.
Yes.
Anytime a different character was introduced, like Connor or even Hatham, any of these characters like that after this, if they weren't Ezio clone number 5, it was like, why is this character so serious? What is the deal here? Why can't he joke more? It's why.
Yeah, and then they get to assassins like Jacob Fry, who's my personal favorite assassin, and everyone's like, he's too jokey. And it's like, what do you want?
Right. I know the complaints for years were too serious, and then it's like they get more jokey. It's like, wow, too much.
I know, it's like, what do you guys want here?
The same crowd dragged that criticism to Watch Dogs 1, where they were like, Aiden Pierce is too serious and angry. It's like, oh, the guy who like had his family murdered.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, he was too serious. Oh, Connor, the guy who watched his village burn down and everyone he loved die.
And his mom.
Oh,
like he was in the
no.
same building as his mom as she was burning to death.
Why didn't he joke about it? Why didn't he be like, man, looks like you're on fire? It's like, it's very silly. I don't know if people wanted a caricature based off of Ezio. I kind of think that this game started to train people to just want the series to be about Ezio.
Right.
For a long time, and the sequels didn't help that.
Yeah.
Again, that's an honorary mention because it's not entirely the fault of this game. I didn't want to list it as a numbered entry, but it's still annoying. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. What are 5 things you think Assassin's Creed 2 did wrong? What are other games you want to see us tackle? We will tackle more Assassin's Creed games in the future. I already did 5 things Assassin's Creed 1 did right and wrong. So let us know what you think down there in the comments down below. Infamous 2, I believe, is next for me for 5 things it did right and wrong. But let us know. We hope you have a fantastic day. And hey, be sure to check out the links down below. The Patreon helps out this channel a ton. We also have the official merch store over on Etsy, where my wonderful wife Jill makes a lot of different things. Mother's Day is coming up. There is a lot. Actually, Mother's Day will be over by the end of this. But you know, you're not the best son. You forgot. So maybe you buy her something to be, you know, make it up to her, perhaps. And it's something cheap too. So I know personally that there's your mommy and you want to buy something for her, but there's also the girl you call mommy and you want to buy her something too. So this allows you to do both at a reasonable price. I'm just saying, you know.
2 for 1?
Yeah, 2 for 1.
Well, 2 for 2.
No, well, no, you can be with both, you know. It's
okay.
We don't judge here.
Okay.
Just keep it away from the law and don't let them know. But hey, we'll see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shway.